Uber drivers, what's the deepest secrets you've overheard in your car? I drove Uber in Denver for a couple months, but the singular event that forced my retirement happened on a classically Colorado night in late December of last year. Cold, snowy, everyone stoned off there as I wasn't planning on driving in such miserable conditions. I'm a shitty enough driver as is. I have no confidence in my abilities, nor should anyone else. I find the need to mention that the only reason I Ubered people around was because I lost my job at Chick-fil-A because of some "can I speak to your manager" beach who wanted fat-free ranch. Despite my insistence we didn't faking have fat-free ranch. Anyways, I got beachy at the beach and got fired, which finally showed me that customer service probably isn't a good job choice for a loving asshole like myself. But I'm chilling at my apartment and the heating at my place was broken because Sean the Dumber's landlord was too busy catching up on Game of Thrones to fix that sheet. So I decide I'm available to drive this girl to the DCPA, Denver Center for the Performing Arts, just to get out to the apartment. Point: this girl lives directly underneath me, but I've never met her before. She's a solid 8/10, curvy, blonde, about 5 feet 2, and with the goofiest smile you'd ever see. As I'm driving her there, she starts telling me the story of why she's all alone on this chilly pre-Christmas night. Turns out, her ex-boyfriend Scott was supposed to go to this play with her tonight, but he's a major asshole. The stories about him start off small enough. He faked her best friend, lied about it, basic shit right. Not even close. Turns out he was dealing drugs from the basement of her old house, like hardcore cocaine and shit, and got her arrested for it. Thankfully she was proven not guilty in court. The evidence was entirely circumstantial, but he had skipped town, so she was left to suffer on her own. She tells me he was abusive, beat her nightly, and tried to rape her before she broke up with him. My sympathy senses are going off the charts for her. She even sheds a few tears apologizing for spilling her history. She asks if I want to see this show with her. She still has the extra ticket. I, of course, jump at the chance to go on a date with this hot bombshell, who's probably definitely out of my league, so I agree. We park about a block away from the DCPA and have to walk the rest of the way. The snow is sprinkling around us like this magical fairy tale sheet, and I'm getting serious vibes from her, like I'm totally gonna fuck you tonight. If you ask vibes we get to our seats in the show when she asks me if I want to go backstage to meet the actresses before it starts. That's against the rules, right? Well, girl insists she knows them and it's fine. So she takes me on this shady little path backstage and pulls out a set of keys to unlock the doors. Red flags are going off, yay, but I'm wanting to get laid, and the last thing I wanna do is piss her off. She takes me to the green room and introduces me to this dude called Scott, one of the lead actors. He looks at her and starts freaking the fuck out, which is when she pulls out a faking knife and stabs him in the gut. That Scott was the same Scott that broke up with her. I got the fuck out of there, called the cops and when everything calmed down, smoked a bowl and googled his name. Turns out, she was the drug dealer and crazy bitch that skipped town. He was her innocent boyfriend who found out and ratted her out to the cops, and she wanted her revenge. She tried to pin the stabbing on me, but when the police interrogated me, they found out all about the trifidi that she left in my car before she left. She was actually a monster in disguise. Who knew? Shit was the end of my Uber career. Not so much secrets as they were things people don't normally say or do in front of strangers. Picked up a divorced father whose buddy paid for his Lyft ride to the bar. Why? Because he was supposed to see his kid that evening for an overpass, but the wife had the authority to dictate the terms of him seeing his own child no matter what, and she wasn't feeling it. Granted, I definitely got one side of the story, but it was faking terrible to see a man who desperately wanted to spend time with his kid be completely blocked from it over bullshit. California had given Ad so little rights, from how this guy described it, that even though he had a stable job, good house, and was willing to pay for a hotel, so he and his son would stay in the town the mom lived in, it was a no-go. That was a tough one cause I was so powerless to help. Picked up a girl to take her straight from work to the hospital to see her dad. Her mom had called her work to make her end her shift early because it was serious. Her dad had cancer. I dropped her off and was like, God, I hate this job cause I'll never know how her night ended. Wrong. Next night, I'm taking people home from bars and her 2 guy friends took her out to get wasted cause her dad had died. They were being drunk idiots, so when I took them to get pizza, she came outside and we talked about it a little. That was probably the one ride where I felt I had a positive impact on someone's life beyond getting them home safely. I was taking 2 couples home. Dropped off couple #1 and the husband of couple #2 was in the front seat and made a comment I didn't hear. Apparently he insulted the wife of couple #1, his wife's BFF. The wife in couple #2 didn't like that, so she hit him. Not like a playful slap, she struck her husband. Straight on domestic violence. I laid down the law. We are not going anywhere as this is how it's gonna be. The dude was drunk on tequila, chick was drunk too, so the ride home was him asking me how would you feel? And me saying it's not about how I feel, you two need to discuss this tomorrow when you're sober. It's weird, man, you get a passing glimpse into people's lives, and loved it, and hated it at the same time. Not my story, but I asked a friend to tell me his that he has shared with me before. I was once driving for Uber and picked up 2 young Spanish guys, 25 maybe. They were clean cut, spoke English very well, and were really polite. The first thing that seemed off was that both decided to sit in the back when typically one of 2 people would usually ride shotgun. It was quiet for a bit after the usual small talk I made, and then they started speaking to each other in Spanish. I know some Spanish, but I wasn't really trying to listen in on their conversation, but with how quiet they were speaking I decided they were trying to be secretive, so I started doing my best to eavesdrop. This became kind of easy, because they started getting louder, and it was obvious they were arguing. Now my Spanish is piss poor, but I think kept hearing me, you, they, where, and location. I'm not sure what the one finally said to the other, but they stopped arguing and that's when I heard you get out, and the Spanish form used was a to command, which I had learned in Spanish was a very disrespectful way to speak to someone. Then there was a lot of arguing where I could only really hear get out, and I paid for a short while, but finally they stopped, and one of them said very politely, my friend forgot his date tonight, could you please let him out here so he can walk home before we get further away. I was conflicted, but I complied with his request and decided I must have been interpreting their conversation wrong. The one getting out thanked me for the ride, apologized for the inconvenience, said one more thing in Spanish to his friend before he left. After that, I thought I had definitely misunderstood them. But then, the dude asks if I can change the destination, saying his plans have changed now due to his friend's date. I said of course, now getting very suspicious, but trying to tell myself I was overreacting. It was a long drive, longer than the first destination, and we began to leave town. Finally I pull up to this old farmhouse that looked abandoned, but figured it must have just been his place, and was a bit shabby, but when the guy got out, he didn't walk toward the house, he just kinda stood there and said bye. Being suspicious, I drove off down the road for a while, before turning back around, and I saw that the guy was walking along the side of the road toward a small graveyard, a decent ways away from the house. I didn't slow down, because I didn't want him to think I was snooping, or even notice it was my car. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm pretty sure there was something waiting in that cemetery hidden somewhere, and as soon as his buddy told him where it was, he cut him out of the deal and made him get out, and there was nothing the one getting out could do, because he wasn't the one paying, and I think he may have even been scared of the other guy. Weirdest night of my life. Former Uber driver and current taxi driver here. One of the things that I didn't really expect from this job is that I feel like a bartender at times. People will just vent to us. Maybe it has to do with the fact that we are an anonymous here and people feel comfortable telling things to a third party. Whatever the case, a couple stick out in my memory. Point one was as an Uber driver in North Jersey. Picked up this girl and her brother. They had been out celebrating her birthday. Brother is completely wasted, and she is sober. He gets in the back of my car, passes out, and she sits in the front. The ride starts, and we make small talk. Apparently, her brother and her boyfriend had taken her out for her day, but boyfriend got mad at her and went somewhere else, and brother decided to get sheet-faced immediately, so she had to take care of him. It ended up being a sheety day. On top of that, she told me her boyfriend was verbally abusive and made her feel really sheety all of the time. I basically said stuff along the lines of, you need to watch out for your own happiness and your so should be making you happy, otherwise I don't see the point in having a so. She started crying buckets and told me how her entire life, she never realized that. She always just assumed that boyfriends/husbands have the right of way, as she put it, and that she never even considered that she should be happy in a relationship. Maybe that stuck with her and she's moving on to better and happier things. I'd like to think so. That ride ended with me helping her drag her brother out of my car and up the steps to the house. Second one. Now I'm a cabbie on Long Island. Pick up these two women, mid-20s, and bring them to a restaurant. We were on the way there and we start chatting and the topic of depression and suicide comes up. One of them was in school to eventually become a psychiatrist. I, myself, deal with depression and anxiety, and I also have a history of suicide attempts, and I speak openly about it when the topic comes up because I want the stigma of mental illness to go away. Anyway, I drop them off and they ask for my name so they can have me as a driver later. A few hours later, the dispatcher sends me back there to pick them up on a driver request. Sweet. I pick them up and we are heading back, but the mood in the car has drastically changed from earlier. It was pretty much silent. I figure maybe they are tired or whatever. Halfway home, one of the women asks if she can ask me about my depression and suicide attempts, and although it was kind of an odd question, I go along with it for the reasons I stated above. Now she's visibly upset, and she confesses that one of her best friends killed herself a few days before. No warning signs or anything. Without too many details, I basically said that that's actually not uncommon, as some people who attempt suicide don't want their friends or family to know how they're feeling. This is one of the reasons I would like to see the stigma surrounding depression and suicide go the fuck away, so she shouldn't feel guilty about it. Then she confesses that she was having suicidal ideation herself and had nobody to talk to about it. So I basically said it's good that she's talking about it now, and she should, because this is not a thing that can be fought one-on-one. I even gave her my phone number so that she could talk to someone who knew what she was dealing with. I also gave her the number for the suicide hotline and told her she should contact a mental health professional. I never did hear from her again, but I really hope she went and got some help. Shout out to r/depression and r/suiciduach. If anybody out there needs to talk to somebody about this stuff, feel free to PM me or hit those subs edit. Just realize this needs it'll help a woman realize she deserves to happy in a relationship and another deal with suicide/depression. Edit. Thank for the gold, kind internet stranger. I could go on for days with these, but this one takes the cake. It's not a secret, but just one of many insane experiences. So I picked up a guy in a suit at around 6 PM on Tuesday near Venice, California. He told me to take him downtown, and per usual I asked if he had a preferred route and he said, no, whatever is quickest. We get going, and the usual banter begins. So how long have you been driving for Uber? Me, 1 year or so. It's a great job, he says. Oh cool, where do you stay at? I answer, in the valley, and he says, oh nice, nice. So, how long have you been driving for Uber? I paused and kind of half smiled, thinking he was faking with me. He wasn't. So I answered verbatim, 1 year or so. It's a great job. He goes, oh cool, where do you stay at? This repeated 3 more times before I finally answered it differently, saying I just started, it's not for me. And him again replying, oh cool, where do you stay at? I answered one last time the original way, but then finally, silence. By this point I was on the 10 highway, stuck in rush hour traffic. I look in my rear view, and he is rubbing his head and hair profusely, like someone going through withdrawals. He took his suit jacket off, and looked severely uncomfortable. I dialed 911 on my phone in case sheet went down. He then out of nowhere yells in a deeper voice than earlier, fuck. And I said sir, is everything alright? And he goes, where are we? I said, I'm on the 10 headed downtown. Is that still okay? He goes, yes. At this point, by the graces of the universe, we ended up moving pretty quickly through traffic. Then, right before we exit off the 10, 2 miles or so from his apartment, he yelled again, where are we? I said, sir, we are almost to your house. Is that still okay? And he goes, yes, that's fine. Once we arrive, I pull up to drop him off, and he gathers his stuff, opens the door and looks back in at me before walking away, and in the most genuine kind way, says, have a great night. Watch out for crazy people. Honestly, one of the strangest, creepiest events ever. Subsequently, I bought a stun gun / taser, and luckily so, as this was just the beginning of several crazy incidents. So damn glad I don't drive anymore. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the responses. I think of all the suggestions, drugs seem to be the most reasonable. Dementia is possible, but the way he was sweating and getting increasingly uncomfortable in the backseat made me think it was something artificial kicking in. Not a driver but a passenger. This is my story. I get picked up at around 2:15 am after the bars. Older man, white Volvo station wagon. It's a pretty long drive, so I figure I'll talk with this guy. I ask him what credentials you have to be an Uber driver, him, background checks and all that. Me, probably for the best day. Wouldn't want any nutballs driving people around, point him, almost as if he didn't even hear what I said. Yeah, I'm a registered sex offender though. Don't worry though, it's only for little girls. Me, point him, you know who I really like though? Philip Seymour Hoffman. He was a true legend. Proceeds to talk about PSH for 15 minutes straight. Me, him, as we get close to my house. Oh, I know that hill. I like to park there and watch the girls walk home from school, point me. Me, as we pass my house. Yeah, just a few more blocks that way. Reported him to Uber. They said they would look into it. Never heard about it again. Edit. In regards to the replies, I think there is a significant chance he was faking with me, but I reported him anyway, to err on the side of safety. Drove for about 6 months. Pick up an older couple, middle of rush hour, middle of downtown, middle of a snowstorm, 3x multiplier, man on his cell and his wife in a rush. We needed to go north. To get to their destination we were about 5 blocks away. We are stuck in traffic and the wife tells me to make a left. I tell her, ma'am, if we go that way, that street doesn't go straight, it eventually curves, and is going to take us south. It's going to take longer to get where we need to go. Lady says, I know where I am going, just turn. After asking her like 3 to 4 times I finally said okay, and make the turn. A block or so later the street curves and now we are going south the total opposite way. She then says, where the fuck are you going? You are going the wrong way. You are trying to take advantage of us. I said, ma'am, I told you we shouldn't have turned. I asked you 3 times, and you told me to turn, so I turned, after telling you it was the wrong way. The lady starts just going ballistic, yelling and cussing and saying I was going the wrong way, to rob her, because of the multiplier. The husband was on the phone the whole time, and says let me call you back, hangs up, then says, we wouldn't be going the wrong way, if you learned how to keep your faking mouth shut. Then he says, when will you learn to just shut the fuck up? He then says, buddy, this isn't your fault. This is my fault. I married this woman 20 years ago, and should just put a gun in my mouth a long time ago. Then they just started going at it. The woman told him maybe I should have put the gun in your mouth for you. And then they were just yelling back and forth. I finally get back on the right street, get them to their spot. It took over an hour ride, was about $70. The whole time they are just yelling. I just raised the radio and let them go at it. They went at it the whole hour non-stop. When I get them to their spot, they stop yelling mid-sentence and say in the most eerily calming way possible, you have a great day. Thank you. It was crazy. I drive a rickshaw, giant tricycle taxi. I'm waiting outside the most expensive club in town for the kick-out when this guy, pupils like saucers and pure panic, leaps into my bike and shouts, go go go. I'll pay you anything, just go. These bikes don't even have engines and he clearly wants a high-speed jet away. No taxis at this time of night though. I gather from his terror-gibbering, half on the phone half to me, that he's a career criminal. Drugs I reckon, and he's been having a bangin' night on the cane. These guys from the bad neighborhoods are always in it for the reputation, so they all know each other. He'd recognized one of the hardcore violent gangs in the club and had decided in his drugged up state it would be a good idea to party with them. It had all been going well till one of them had punched him in the face and now he thought they were out to kill him. He got on the phone to some boys, trying to rally the troops. Saying things like tell him to look under the floorboards in the kitchen, there's something there he needs to grab. This whole time we are traveling uphill at about 3 miles an hour. I got to as far as the license allows us, wasn't too keen to take him to his front door in case he was right about it all. He emptied his wallet, gave me a handshake and a hug, and sprinted off into the night. Coke's a hell of a drug. So I had been driving for Uber for almost a year. I didn't drive full time, just some weekends and nights for extra money. I've had my fair share of oddballs and weirdos, but this one takes the cake. It was a little after 3. Most of my rides had been drunken people going in and out of downtown. This one was strange, because he was getting picked up from a house in the city, but just outside of downtown. I pick the guy up, and his destination is only a few blocks away. Weird. He sits up front and asks how my night was, all the standard questions. About 2 minutes and he breaks it down for me. Okay, listen, I'm not gay, I'm a married man, but I want to give you a blowjob. I literally laughed out loud at first, thinking he was joking. He goes on to explain he just loves doing it, wants nothing to do with me other than that. I was in shock. As a straight man, this was the first time I've had to say no to a BJ. I said no numerous times, but he persisted until I stopped the ride about a block away from his destination and said get out. I realized he was just going up and down the block requesting Ubers in the hopes of giving out BJs. It was kind of sad though. He showed me his ring and swore up and down he wasn't gay. He just had some weird thing about blowing other guys. I reported him to Uber and never heard from him again. TLDR. Drove Uber. Guy tried to give me a BJ. He persisted. Kicked him out. I had a man tell me he was a psychic and proceeded to read me. He was pretty spot on, telling me the last 3 locations I had spent considerable amount of time at and why I would like them more than where I was currently living. I think he had a pretty strong accent and I didn't know he was reading me for about 3 minutes in the beginning, but it seemed pretty spot on. I had 2 teenage girls run into my car from a big house in a quiet area. They then proceeded to discuss all the drama that went down at the house just moments before. From what I could tell, the one girl was friends with everyone and brought the other gal along. Apparently drama ensued with the first friend and she told everyone they were gfoing and the second friend was just along for the ride. Oh, to be young. I had a 14-year-old boy going to his first date. He had never kissed a girl and told me that his lady friend requested to be kissed at the end of the date. He was super nervous and asked me if he looked okay and for some pointers. He was so cute. It's rides like those you wish you could be IRL friends and know how their days go. Also had a Trump supporter who was passionately discussing his merits with his laddie friend. It seemed like he was more into the relationship than she was, but I dropped them at her place and they went on their merry way. Had one guy get in the car on the phone arguing with his friend how he should get on welfare and talking about child support. He then told me he doesn't work and to drop him at his friend's brother's uncle's garage. I guess not really secrets. Let me think on it more. Late to the game, so this will probably get buried, but wanted to share my story. I have been told more than once I'm a good looking guy. Not trying to brag, but I have typically had no trouble meeting women and dating. Until that is, I met my ex. She really played mind games with me. I fell for her hard. She left me after a couple of months where we progressed rapidly to where we were inseparable, right up until she abruptly had a change of heart. Rumor was she went back to her previous boyfriend. I was the rebound guy just long enough for her to get back with him. 3 days later I lost my job. It was a rough patch. So I figured I would keep busy driving for Uber to keep my mind occupied and also have some extra income. And yes, somewhere in the back of my mind I had some ideas about meeting women this way, despite not quite feeling emotionally ready. But I couldn't afford to spend money at the bar at the time. So 3 weeks go by, and it was pretty mundane, all things considered. I was making enough to stay afloat, not meeting anyone extraordinary or having any stories when I went home. And that is when Rachel stepped into my car. As a general rule, I would ask people to ride in the back seat. Most did so without me having to ask. On occasion I would have a big group and a front seat passenger. I rolled down my window, saw this incredibly gorgeous and sex-charged face with a huge smile and eyes I couldn't resist. She immediately told me, "I'm sorry, but I'd rather ride in the front, if that is okay. I don't like sitting in the back." You could immediately tell by the looks of her and her expression, she is accustomed to getting what she wants. And of course I couldn't say no to that face. So she gives me a destination, about 20 minutes away. She is pretty quick to start getting personal. Before I knew it, I had shared with her my entire pathetic life story of the most recent events. I managed to laugh a bit at times. It wasn't really awkward. She seemed caring and supportive, and yes, I was beginning to get the vibe she might want to invite me in when we get back to her place. I had already made a strict rule, as of course is Uber policy as well. I would never do this, although if there was a spark I would consider exchanging numbers. So sure enough, she decides to invite me in for coffee. Did so with the same big grin and those piercing eyes that were difficult to refuse. But I stood firm. As much as I'd love to, I'm not allowed to do that. I could lose my job and that is all I have left right now. She looked at me and said, "Well, that is a shame, because I really wanted to give you all I have left in me tonight." This seemed a little strange. I did exchange numbers with her. Ultimately, when I read the news a few days later, I breathed a sigh of relief. If you want to know the rest, the story is here. So I walked up to my Uber driver's car, saw he had some bumper stickers and decals, didn't think anything of it, and didn't look twice. Got in the car, said hello, finished sending a text to my friend, then put my phone down. When I looked up, and around me, I froze immediately. Every single thing in his, a 50-60-year-old man, car, was a Twilight decoration. We are talking air fresheners, stickers on every surface of the inside of the car. From the passenger mirror I could now see that the decals were excerpts from the Twilight books. I was mortified and did not know what to say until we hit a turn and the Edward air freshener turned sideways and I saw a Death Star on the other side. I immediately latched onto this as my one shred of hope in avoiding any talk of Twilight. To which his response was that his wife forced him to have one Star Wars thing in the car, but that was her obsession and his was much better. I then listened for the next 20 minutes about why this 50-60-year-old man was Team Edward and why the series was a gift from God. I took to Facebook midway through my listening to him to ask my friends if I should tuck and roll or wait it out and see how it ended. Clearly my friends hate me, as every single one of them told me that sounded amazing and started compiling questions to ask the driver. Also, definitely freaked one of my drivers out when a guy I was dating and I recapped the movie The Witch as we were coming home from seeing it. After we mentioned the part with the Witchmaster baiting with the dead baby, I'm fairly certain our driver was ready to throw us out on the freeway. We are assholes and knew he was freaking out, so we couldn't stop ourselves from going further, giggling like idiots through the whole thing. Poor guy. Got in a car chase last year because a stripper agreed to sleep with two guys, and then when they didn't have a condom, she jacked their money and called me, which I didn't find out why they were following me until I almost got to her exit. I lost them well before that, though. I've been flashed by women and propositioned by both men and women. I was told the story about a Lyft driver that got detained by the cops because his rider had just murdered two people and called Lyft for the getaway. A lot of people hating on their bosses/jobs/companies as well as SOs. One lady told me she hoped her son wouldn't marry the girl he's currently with. Had a very pretty young woman a few weekends ago tell me how much of a sub she is and how she'll let a man do whatever, literally whatever he wants to her, and how she has yet to meet a man that will agree to degrade her in the way she wants to be. She then asked if I'd like a tip, a hit from her weed vape pen, or play just the tip. My next ride was waiting for her to get out, so none of those took place. Most people and their conversations are actually pretty chill, and the crazy ones are usually few and far between. Edit. Forgot about the drunk girl that had some fetish with fountains, so she had me stop by one that she knew of that was nearby. She gets out, climbs up on a horse, flashing me while doing so because she had to pull up her skirt to climb up, has me take her picture, pulls her skirt up, climbs off, climbs on another one, pulls the skirt down, I take the picture, she pulls her skirt up, gets off the horse, and walks back to me pulling her skirt down. The whole way to her destination she tells me about how I need to find a woman that knows how to ride a horse. Lumpy, middle-aged couple straight up boned in the back seat. I drive a minivan, so it was in the third row, but still pretty obvious / awkward. Turns out they both were married, not to each other. Have been flirting for years at work, both got schwammered at an office party, and ended up catching an Uber home together. We pulled up to the destination, the lady's house, literally within a minute of them, finishing. That's when I got the story from homie as I drove him home. He asked me to stop for cigarettes, then had one with the meter running outside the van. It was more than a little awkward. He tipped pretty well though, so, yeah. Another time these people, 2 guys and a girl, got in at the marina and wanted to go downtown. They looked like the cover models for Douchebag Monthly magazine. Girl is 7 shades of plastic surgery, guys wearing aviator glasses, blazers over t-shirts, $300 designer jeans and loafers with no faking socks. Oh yeah, and they're using junior high level code words and ducking behind seats as they pass around, and debumps from a vial of coke. I lolled, told them they don't have to hide it from me, and just please, don't faking get any on the seats. Not a huge secret I guess, but it was pretty obvious both guys had nailed, and would later on be again nailing, a aforementioned crash sesh dummy. Fun times. This is kind of random, but I took an Uber home late one night, 12 AM, in Beaverton, Oregon, back from a friend's birthday party. I was feeling really down and just wanted to be away from a large group of people. When the car arrived, I asked to sit in the front. I'm not very sure why. He was an older man and a bit heavyset. I got into the car and made small talk. I asked him if he loved working for Uber because I was thinking about driving for them. He tells me yes, he loves it because he can flirt with cute girls and his wife wouldn't even have to know. Then he proceeded to tell me about how beautiful I am and how he's horny. I was like, what the fuck did I get myself into? He goes on about how he has to take hormones to keep him going, and that it makes him horny all the time. Weird shit he said to me during my 10-minute ride. I'm so horny. Ah. You horny? Can tell when women are horny, because I can smell it on them. You're so beautiful, such a cute smile and a nice body. It's anyone at home waiting for you? I'm a lesbian. I laughed awkwardly, and he could tell I didn't understand what he meant. So he proceeded to say, I said that because I love oral, and I love giving oral. Do you like it? I'm sorry, it's my hormone pills. It makes me so horny I can't help it. I kept changing the subject and laughing awkwardly because I didn't know what to do. I was a little terrified. I reported him and honestly hope he's not driving for them anymore. A buddy overheard his passengers, 1 London rude boys on a gang initiation, saying that when they got to their destination, some rival gang member or some other pathetic sheet, they would throw a brick through a window, followed by some Molotov cocktails, and then stab anyone that may run outside. Having been a London cabbie for a long time, he's seen a lot of nonsense, so simply told them that he didn't have time to refuel before getting their call and would need to go to a petrol station, called the police while paying for said petrol, took the long way round to their destination, and then watched as the 2 lads got arrested by the waiting police, where they found a bag full of some large kitchen knives and 3 vodka bottles full of petrol. Fortunately, the cops also made a show of arresting him so as to take any focus off him informing them. As far as the idiots were concerned, an anonymous tip brought the cops there. He's also had an investment banker / fund manager talking and crying over the phone to her therapist about losing over £15 million and not sure if she had a job, parents' disapproval, should commit suicide, or whatever. She didn't give a shit about the people who that money actually belonged to. Finally, some low-grade politician having sex with a hooker. They had no destination. The politician's kink was public sex in a moving vehicle. So, this is kind of the opposite of what you asked. The craziest story an Uber driver told me. He was from LA. He explained that he had been driving people around for a while. And he was an older dude, probably 60 or so, and a big guy, a bear. If you want to go that route, especially per our conversation. I'm going to my destination with this guy, and he starts telling me about how he drove people around for Uber in LA before coming to Phoenix, Arizona. He drove a gay couple around, and they were super rich. Gay dudes in LA that are rich? No big surprise. But one of them got super drunk and asked if he could blow the Uber driver guy over and over again. According to his story, he says nope, and the guy keeps insisting on it. And the driver finally says no, and if you keep insisting on this, I'm going to have to hurt you. He had been a bouncer for 20 years, and well, he wasn't going to take any more of this garbage from a gay dude. He got a $100 tip from that guy's boyfriend every time he drove them around after that. And there is more to this dude's story, but I quickly realized that he was a pathological liar, or he lead a life that was so fantastical and full of millionaire lesbians that he had slept with that I could barely conceive of how awesome he was. It was a fun ride. Not a driver, but a passenger here was once picked up in the Bay Area by a very respectable looking gentleman driving Uber Black. Mid-40s, salt plus PEPPER-PROFESSOR-SORTA-VIBE. Really nice guy. I work in digital security and was in the area for a large event, so he starts talking about the industry, things related to government surveillance and the like. It's apparent that he's an intelligent guy who understands the nuances of tech and legal issues related to tech, which makes for a rare but great conversation. Eventually, he begins to tell us about how there is a lot of research going on at Stanford to use a color spectrum for encryption. I'd not heard about this work before, so it was initially interesting. He kept trying to explain, without really saying anything meaningful, how this was going to change the world and revolutionize privacy for us regular people and prevent the government from snooping around in our business. He then proceeded to tell us that tires were going to the reason humanity doesn't survive beyond 2020. Yeah, you read that right. Tires. It seems that tires and other vulcanized rubber products used in high friction applications create rubber dust that's polluting everything. All that black staining you see on cars in the city? It's not soot/dirt/dust/etc that's dirtying those cars. It's rubber particulate. It's destroying our oceans, causing cancer, creating holes in the ozone layer. Luckily for us, this guy and some of his friends have a startup that's gonna save us from ourselves, but he's really worried he won't get the message out in time. He unleashed his vision of a rubber-free world upon us for the remaining 20 or so minutes of our ride, each progressively weirder and less comfortable than the last. People are faking insane. Passenger here, but a story from an Uber drive I just couldn't pass up sharing. Every time I hop in an Uber I always like to ask the driver what their biggest fare has ever been. I was not prepared for the story that was about to ensue. He was a strange dude, had a bit of a Russian/European accent, and what looked like black paint in and around his ears. He told me he once picked up a passenger in New York City who wanted to go to DC. Between driving a black car, being on surge, and some hefty DC traffic, the bill ran up to be almost $1,000. By the time he said he finished his fare, it was almost 3 in the morning, so he figured why not crash at a small motel at the side of the road, spend 50 or so bucks on a room, sleep, and head home in the morning. Little did he know what sort of surprise he was in for. He said that, while he was sleeping he could hear someone breathing. When he tried to figure out where the sound was coming from he couldn't seem to put his finger on it. Eventually, he held his breath long enough to determine that the sound was actually coming from under his bed. He jumped out of his bed and saw that his bed frame was a totally enclosed platform-like box, so he decided to knock on it. To his shock, someone responded saying, "Can you cut that out? I'm trying to sleep here." He immediately alerted the motel manager who indicated that he rents out bed space underneath motel guest beds for people who wanted a steeply discounted nightly rate. 2 weeks later, my driver said he saw some sort of special on the news about this exact phenomenon. Just goes to show you, there really aren't monsters under your bed, just people trying to save some dough. I've been driving Uber for 2+ months and have completed nearly 400 rides in that time. I've already seen some of the standard crazy stuff. Drunk people so inebriated that they can't get out of the car. When it's time to get out, another rider asked, "Where's my friend?" She never got in the car. Was she supposed to? Beyond that, the hardest trips to deal with other heartbreaks. Guys, you have no idea just how bad women can break down after you send them on their merry way for the last time. I had one rider who was both drunk and dealing with an apparent breakup. She was wrecked, full on ugly cry. She kept saying how she hated herself and that she wanted to die. It was raining pretty hard, so when she pulled up to her upscale apartment garage, she discovered her clicker didn't work. She faking lost it. What am I supposed to do as a driver? "So sorry, but get out in the rain, you'll get over it," is what an asshole driver would have said. I needed for her to calm down. "Look, I don't know you, but I care about you. Take my hand, it's going to be okay." Still a mess, she composed herself as best as she could and left in the rain to find another pedestrian entrance. Maybe that's no big deal for some of you seasoned drivers. The one that takes the cake is my very first ride. So I'm pulling out of Walmart after literally buying my dashboard phone clip, and I get my first ring. I go, pick up a kid, probably 18 or 19 at most. "Where are we headed?" "We are going to my buddy's house. I forgot something." We drive the 10 minutes there. I tell him this my first Uber ride ever, as either a driver or a passenger. He's friendly, and he's digging the music I put on. When we arrive he asks if I can do the round trip. I'm totally new to this, of course, so I didn't realize I could simply leave the meter running. He was in and out in 2 minutes flat. I was like, ugh, yeah, you're gonna have to make another request. I don't want to break the rules. You really are new to this, huh? And then something peculiar. He calls the guy inside to request me again. Why would he do that? Homeboy just went in for 2 minutes with nothing but a backpack. What does the guy inside owe my rider? Oh my god. I just helped this kid make a delivery. I just unknowingly broke the law on my first ride ever. FML. So my first ride ever, I presume, was a young drug dealer who gets his hard up buyers to book Uber rides to make the deals. Passenger, not a driver. I had just arrived an afternoon in Boston after flying home from studying in France. Have a lot of friends in the city, so I went out that night for a few adult beverages. Luckily I was staying in the burbs like 20 minutes outside the city for a few days, was maybe 2 or 3 am. Once we start rolling I start chatting with the driver. "Where you from? How long have you been driving?" Sort of stuff. He's Moroccan, and I get stoked because Morocco's second language is French. So we start speaking, since I figured English was his third language and he might enjoy speaking something more familiar, and reminded him of home. He flips out, in a happy way, that I speak French and starts telling me how much he misses it. I tell him a bit about my time in France and I tell him the story of my brother who married a beautiful Moroccan woman and they recently had a son, and how great her family was to me when I was backpacking solo around Morocco. He starts getting really animated. He was already animated about speaking French, but now he's trying to make eye contact by turning his whole torso to me. In the back point we turn onto Story, which is a super sketchy road in Boston. Lot of curves. People drive fast. 2 lanes each way and no barrier. River on one side, brick buildings on the other. So I calm down and start to really squeeze the handle on the door, as if that piece of rubberized plastic is gonna save me from the burning wreckage after a collision with any of the potential obstacles. He starts telling me about the women there and how they make such great wives. He starts telling me about his family and his 5 younger sisters that are still there, and he says a few are around my age point. Then he asks me, hand to the spaghetti monster, straight up, if I wanted a Moroccan wife, because he could make it happen with one of his sisters. I have a sister and I think if I pimped her out to any guy I would instantly feel awful for putting anyone in the same room with her, let alone in a forced marriage. So while I'm soaking in the frightening question just posed to me, I watch the driver turn back to the road and turn Ostoro onto a one-way bridge going the wrong way, going way too fast. Admittedly at the end of the road it gets kind of ambiguous, and that mistake could happen in the day, and it was pitch black. The dude also realizes what's happening, stops in the middle of the two lanes, does a 3-point turn, and an illegal U-turn, just as I see the headlights of an oncoming car, and finds the right turn point. We spent the rest of the ride, a solid 7 minutes, in absolute silence. I had the combo special of a 7-hour flight and jet lag, plus a medium buzz from the bevs, and a medium life-threatening shock with a side of an arranged marriage. Hell of a day. Point I did not end up marrying one of his sisters. I suppose the story kind of fits here, but I'm not a driver and this was in a taxi. Point hail a random cab in a not so touristic area, but still a nice area. Tell the driver where I'm going. The driver smiles and says he's not worried about the meter cause he just received a huge tip from the previous passenger. Okay, no problem then. So then he starts telling me he was driving past a pharmacy in another nice neighborhood and a guy with a backpack was desperate to catch a ride. So he cut across 2 lanes and stopped for the guy. Guy jumps in and says just drive. Let's go, I'm in a rush. So the driver hesitates for a minute, but then drives off after a block or so. He asks the guy again, and the passenger says just drive like 10 blocks and I'll get out. Doesn't matter, just go. The driver tells me he started getting suspicious and started inspecting the guy and realized he had a revolver in the backpack and was on edge. The passenger understood he was being watched and says just pull up right here. The meter read something like $10 and the guy reaches in his backpack, grabs a bunch of bills that were just thrown in there, fumbles around the revolver, says fuck it, and hands him the first bill he could get that covered it, a $50. Point before the driver could reach for change the man was already out of sight. Driver tells me he decided to go back to the busy pharmacy area to pick up more passengers and saw some police. Turns out the guy he had picked up had just robbed a pharmacy. Never really got any secrets from my time as an Uber driver, but I do have some interesting encounters. One of my first few weeks on the job I picked up a guy in North Jersey from the back of a church at nearly 2 AM in the middle of nowhere. I almost didn't accept the request because of the location. I mean, who's at a church at this hour? Well, it turns out to be a guy from California who repairs church organs who was on call to fix this particular church organ that broke Friday. Really interesting and laid back guy, super appreciative of me picking him up and helping load his equipment into the car. Another one from the first couple weeks was a group of 3 guys and a girl I picked up from the outskirts of town heading into town for some bar hopping. They spent the first half of the trip talking about how the guys were all going to go back and fuck the girl in hers all night after some drinks. Halfway to the bar they realized one of them forgot their ID, and we turned back to get it, and I was invited in for drinks, which I declined due to, you know, the legality of drinking and driving, especially as a somewhat illegal car service operator. I ended up picking them up later that night and they were all sloppy drunk, and ended up taking turns fingering her in my backseat. Had to charge them the cleaning fee to rid my car of that smell. Last story, and honestly probably my favorite one, is when I got a call from more central Jersey area because some person dragged me that far south. Ended up in a very rich looking development lined with cars for nearly 3/4 of a mile into the development. That's what I realized. I was driving right into a huge summer block party situation. Now mind you, it's nearly 4 AM at this point, and as I'm driving cautiously through, I keep seeing bodies passed out on cars, on people's front lawns, random cars fogged up, and shaking every so slightly. It was a scene straight out of one of those bad high school movies. I get to the end of the road in a cul-de-sac and there's 7 blonde girls waiting, carrying their one friend who sprained her ankle, and they all pile into my car. Most of them were drunk. One was on her first experience with weed and the last one passed out on top of the rest almost immediately. It was a 40-minute trip back up north, and I'm glad I didn't get pulled over for having a literal dog pile of drunk 20-year-old blondes in my car. Got them all to one of their houses, where they left their cars and the cops were there ticketing all their illegally parked cars, to which most of them ran out of the car, except for one who just wanted me to take her home to the next town over. Strangest ride I ever took. I've been driving for a month and I don't have any really awesome stories, but I do have these. Driving a guy to work, about 35-minute total trip. He's really nice. We chat for about 15, and then I drive, and he does whatever. 10 minutes after that, he opens the window a few inches. I'm not thrilled, but whatever, he's not hurting anything. Then I smell the reason, and he missed as well, because he opened the window the rest of the way and left it open the rest of the ride. It was legitimately the worst fart I've smelt since my ex-wife ate some eggplant 10 years ago. I think my brain melted a little. At least I made about $25 for the trip. I drove a few brothers to a house party. During the whole ride, they were comparing relative hotness of the women who lived in the dorms under them, and they left half a 12-pack of Bud Light in the back. I didn't realize this until my next fare. 4 people leaving an Allman Brothers concert got in. I told them they were welcome to it if they wanted it, and they decided that was clearance to drink it in the car. Still, they were polite and not rowdy, just loud and already drunk, so I'll let it go. My first tip came from 4 girls who I picked up from an apartment complex and drove 2 miles to dinner at Cheesecake Factory. They had clearly been pre-gaming, good for them to make the decision not to drive, and they had a fun time in the backseat figuring out shoes and such. As they were exiting, one of them tapped me on the shoulder and handed me a $20 on a $4 payout. That was nice. I used to drive part-time. I was about 25 years old and a male, typically 1 weekend night a week, as a supplement to my regular income as a marketing professional. In general, I really enjoyed it. I'm a very conversational guy, and I found that more than half of my passengers would engage me in fairly stimulating conversation. Passengers often asked if I had crazy stories. I didn't really have anything too crazy, but a few things stand out. The worst was definitely when I picked up 2 college brothers from day drinking. The one bro was pretty cool, the other guy was a total asshole. He would belligerently insist that I violate traffic laws, run red lights, not stop for stop signs, etc. He also brought an open beer with him and refused to get rid of it. When I didn't break the law for him, he would aggressively lean forward and start screaming things like "bussy" and such in my ear. I was legitimately worried for my safety. That ride wasn't too long, thank God. I sent a note to Uber because I was seriously freaked out after this and immediately stopped driving for the day. They didn't do anything outside of supposedly deactivating the guy's account. Of course, there were a number of times where I was flirted with, typically by overly drunk women. Also once very uncomfortably by a gay couple, so I never made much of it. There was one time, however, where it was the last ride of the night, about 2:30 AM. I picked up an absolutely gorgeous Latina woman from a bar where she was quite sober and had apparently had a bad night arguing with her friends. It also turned out to be her last weekend in my city as she was relocating. She was very flirty for the whole ride, but not in the obnoxious drunk way that my passengers normally were. By the time we arrived to her place, it was pretty obvious we were both attracted to her. I probably spent another 5 minutes talking to her in front of her house after I ended the ride. Near the end, she longingly looked at me as if to invite me in. It was clear I was still going to have to be the one to ask, or at least make a move, however, and so I drew the line. I didn't feel comfortable overtly flirting with her. It felt unprofessional. Sometimes though I definitely look back, if I had the chance to do it again, I probably would've done it differently. My worst ride was also my best ride and most twisted. I work in the DFW area. One evening I requested at the Dallas Cowboys football stadium. The game had just gotten started, so I was surprised to receive a call this early into a game. When I arrived I picked up a short Hispanic man and a very beautiful, tall blonde woman. The man looked sick and the woman had a slight grin on her face. En route to their first destination, the female's house, the couple spills a very interesting story. This is the abridged version. Man has crush on woman. Man tells co-worker that he has crush on woman. Co-worker sells counterfeit tickets to man for $sign, so he can take woman on a sweet date. Man asks woman to game. Woman says yes. Man and woman go to game. Man gets stopped by security for bad tickets. Man and woman go to the stadium holding area, stadium jail. Man shows text messages showing he bought the tickets from someone else. Man and woman get released and are asked to leave. Now this is where things get interesting. I have been listening to the game on the radio. The call that Romo is down and hurt comes across the broadcast. The man gets very upset and begins to speak very colorfully. He also begins to hit the back of my seat, was sitting directly behind me. His fist missed the back of my seat and made contact with the back of my head and neck, just below my ear. I immediately pull over and begin to inform the man that you, in fact, cannot assault your Uber driver and he will be removed from the car if he cannot control himself. The man turned pale and began to apologize profusely. The woman also begins to scold him on his behavior and asks that he be dropped off first. I change routes and not a word is spoken through the rest of the ride point. After arriving at the woman's house, she steps out and comes to my window. She apologizes to me, informs me that she went on this date as a dare by her other co-workers and that she was a lesbian. She tipped me $20 and left. TLDR, don't hit your Uber driver and don't buy sports tickets off your shady co-workers. Oh man, I'm so late, but I have a good secret of an Uber rider that actually involves me. I drove for Uber about 5 months. Most of the time I drove was in the winter in the Jersey City /Hoboken/NYC area. My first night was Halloween, which was pretty crazy. I have a lot of pretty crazy stories, but this one takes them off the faking cake. This was my last Uber passenger ever. My last Uber passenger was from this hotel in Newark. It was 2 middle-aged white women. I'm a mid-20s black guy. They were both pretty attractive and were very friendly. They started talking to me about the music I was playing, Radiohead, Sam Smith, Adele, and telling me where they were from and what they were doing. They were having a girls' night out. One woman was from Texas, and she was visiting the other friend in Jersey, so they got a hotel room for the weekend in Newark, and were going to a bar in Hoboken, about a 30 minutes ride, which turned into more like 45, because there was heavy construction at the time blocking access to the major highway in this part of town. So we shoot the sheet for the entire ride, and as we get about 8 minutes out from their destination, which was closed, so I recommended another bar nearby, they ask me if they could have my phone number so that they can call me when they get done and we can go off Uber and I'll keep all the money to take them back to their hotel. At this point I began to wonder if these women were trying to fuck me. So I say hell yes, not really, and I give them my phone number. She calls me immediately so that I can have her number as well. They kept asking me if I was sure I would be available, and I said absolutely. So I drop them off, turn Uber off, and park around the corner. I sit in my car on Reddit, YouTube and Sheet, and I'm really thinking about the possibilities. Tonight may be the night that I have a 3/some with 2 MILFs. Oh my god, this is gonna be awesome. It's cold out, so every 5 to 10 minutes or so I start my car up to warm up. About an hour passes, and she calls me. I'll let it ring just a few times, so I don't seem too desperate. She asks me to come get them, and I tell them yay, I'm right around the corner actually. She says great. Boom. I pull up to the bar and her friend is clearly faking sheet-faced, even though I can only see from the street. She's stumbling around talking to this group of black guys around my age. I think, oh no, they found other black guys to have a crazy wild interracial MILF 3/some with. The friend who called me and asked for my number and everything comes to the door first, and she's still very nice and friendly and thanks me for coming back to get them. She apologizes that her friend is taking so long. She begins to yell at the top of her lungs at her friend, who is not that far away. Rennie, let's go. I start to think, oh shit, these women might be crazy. The friend just continues to talk these guys, while her friend is literally screaming at the top of her lungs for her to get in the car. She's making a huge scene. After a few minimums the friend comes to the car with one of the guys and her friend is just like no. Yelling at her like a dog. They begin fighting about her bringing this guy along, and the guy makes eye contact with me, and he's clearly like what the fuck. They fight for a few minimums, but it felt so long, because there was a huge crowd of people, and I was getting very embarrassed. So after a while a combination of things happened. The not so drunk friend convinced the absolute sheet-faced friend to let this guy go, but after their scene the guy did not seem down for any of it, so he probably wouldn't have come anyway. Yay. Interracial MILF 3/some back on. Her friend slumps into the car, looks me in my eyes, and says my name. Do you wanna fuck us? In my head I'm like yes. Where? Right here? Let's do it. But before I can even answer, her friend says no. Don't answer that. She pushes her friend in the car, gets in and tells me to drive out immediately. I drive off, and the drunk sheet-faced friend starts to bawl. She's crying about how she just wants to get faked, and her friend won't let her. So at this point I'm very confused. The friend who asked for my number and called me is the one who doesn't wanna fuck me. And I'm upset because she's being a total cork block because her friend is literally crying for dick, so just let me help. Yeah, no. But I'm completely quiet at this point. Her friend is consoling her, telling her that that would be a mistake and how she would regret that, referring to the guy she wanted from the bar. After a while it gets kinda serious. The sheet-faced one, a interracially cream-peed MILF, starts to talk about how much she hates her life, she hates being married, she hates raising his kids, and how sometimes she just wants it all to be over, to leave and never come back. This makes the other friend also break down in tears, and she says that she also hates being married. So now they're both crying and holding each other. Once everything cooled down, the more sober woman starts talking to me again. She adds me into their conversation while she's consoling her friend, asking me to help reassure her that everything is gonna be okay, and so I do, and it's very awkward. At this point I'm over it. The potential for something straight out of a porno seems completely done, and I just want them out my car. The following details are for you Jersey folks. So we get on 78W from Hoboken, and the really drunk friend is for the most part passed out at this point. She wakes up and she says she really needs to pee. Her friend tells her that they are almost there, but she tells her that she absolutely cannot hold it. She has me pull over to the side of the road, which, at this point, was on the bridge right before the turnpike entrance. The drunk one opens the door, pulls her pants down, and starts peeing on the side of the road. I'm astonished as to what is happening, and I'm cursing myself for waiting around for these women. Too much time passes, and I'm wondering if this woman is also taking a sheet. Lots of cars have driven by at this point, and I'm even more embarrassed than before, but eventually she finishes her business / passes back out, and her friend pulls her back in the car and we continue. The drunk friend is no longer part of this story. The sober / still conscious woman starts thanking me for how nice I've been, and how grateful she is that I did this for them. Yay, I just want to get home at this point and fuck Uber. But I'm still polite back, and then we start talking about price. She tells me to name the price. I say $20 would be good. I'm an idiot, and she says no, I'll give you a little more than that. I say cool, blah blah blah. Then she says, when we get to hotel, I'm going to make out with you. I make a nervous laugh, oh yeah. And she says I'm not even joking, oh my god. Yes. Interracial MILF 3 / some was clearly off, but I still might be able to bang her at least. I fell silent for most of the rest of the trip. I had no idea what to say. Hindsight is 20/20. I definitely shoulder flirted back and said something like just make out. But nope, I didn't say anything, but I knew she was serious. We pull up to the hotel. I put the car in park and turn around to face her. She looks at her friend who is no longer with us, and then looks back at me and gives me an inquisitive look. I nod. She sits up, and we start making out. She is an amazing kisser. I'm enjoying every faking millisecond of making out with this hot woman, another man's disgruntled wife, some kid's mom. We are going at it. There's short breaks when she tells me how handsome I am, and she rubs her fingers across lips, breathing heavily. She wants me. I'm caressing her body and just gently graze her breast, at which point she stopped and stared at me. So I stopped too. She just stared at me, and I didn't know what to do. I almost started to apologize. Did I take it too far? She sits back and grabs her wallet. She hands me a crisp $100 bill and thanks me again. She's still staring at me like she wants me. She sits up again and makes out with me some more. Her tongue is deep in my mouth, and I'm in heaven. This session doesn't last as long. Overall we made out for about 10 minimums. When she stops, she asks me to help take her friend back to her room, to which, duh, so I get out. I'm parked illegally, but I'll take the ticket please. Walk around and we help her friend to her feet. We get her up. I have one arm, she has the other, and we walk to the hotel. When we get to the lobby there's 5 hotel employees just hanging around, and when they see us, they all get this look of concern and start to come help. The hot MILF I just tongued down in my car seems to get spooked by this. It's like she wasn't expecting there to be so many employees in the lobby and she says to me, "I got it from here, thanks." "Are you sure?" "Yes, thank you, good night." Okay. I walk back to the car and sit for a minute. Did that really just happen? I sit there for a while still hot and bothered by what just happened. I was sure I was going to fuck that woman. I think I still can. I call her. No answer. Damn it. She calls back not 2 minutes later. "Hey, are we good?" I don't know what to say. "Yay, we are good." "Okay, thank you. Have a good night." I'm beating myself up. I should have said something, but I was so damn nervous and way out of my comfort zone. I text her more. To which she replied, "I would love to, but she's really sick, and I have to take care of her. Thank you. Good night." To which I replied, "Maybe some other time." I never heard from her again. TLDR, almost had Borno level wild interracial MILF double cuckolding 3/some, but one MILF got too drunk. Had awesome makeout session with other hot married MILF, but probably faked up what cold've still been Borno level sheet. By Uber. Thanks for the memories.